The following podcast has been brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up now using the URL audibletrial.com/TTV to get a free audiobook of your choosing. We recommend Brick by Brick, How LEGO Rewrote the Rules of Innovation and Conquered the Global Toy Industry. You may recognize this as one of the sources we use in our show, Bionicle Autopsy. Remember, that's audibletrial.com/TTV. Enjoy the show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, sync. What's up, everybody? This is Ven.
I'm Eljay.
I'm Kahi.
I'm Takuma.
And this is TTV Talks. How y'all doing?
All right.
I thought you were going to go with This is Eljay, honestly, and then you're like, I'm Eljay, and I was like, do I go with This is Kahi, or do I do I'm Kahi, because Eljay, and then Eljay kind of ruined it, so it's okay.
I didn't ruin anything. It didn't begin.
You ruined it.
I didn't ruin it.
It was... You had one job.
I have several
Yeah, that's
jobs.
to make Eljay the Becoming. Ha ha!
Oh, that old comic series that never happened. Yeah, exactly, Takuma. Huh? What is that? No one knows because Eljay never did it.
Okay, let's get through a couple of things, guys. First of all, nobody, like none of our fans are gonna get that joke unless they followed us back from when we
Exactly.
made comics.
No one's gonna get that joke.
Second
tell 'em about it.
second of all, that's not even a TTV joke. Meso says that off recording all the time. I don't currently recall a time where he's ever said that on recording. So doubly, no one's ever gonna get that.
We're going to get it now. Tell us about Eljay the Becoming.
Yeah, they're gonna get it now.
Tell us about Eljay the Becoming, Eljay. What is Eljay the Becoming? How did you become Eljay?
You know what?
He's too ashamed. Okay, basically...
Since you tried to do this, I guess there's no other choice but to go ahead and discuss it. But there needs to be a bit of backstory about what Eljay the Becoming is, because it's a digital pixel comic series that ran on BZPower for a short amount of time.
Digital pixel comic series, man.
Digital
fancy.
pixel.
Digital pixel.
So fancy.
Digital pixel. I don't know. It's a Sprite comic on BZPower.
As opposed to
many
analog
years back.
pixels.
Yes, Takuma.
See, that's funny,
Yes.
Takuma. It's hilarious.
So, yeah. It's a comic series that ran on BZPower, and I never got to finish it, and it was about my character's backstory, and that's
It's
it.
a Bionicle comic series. Let's get that out of the way, too. I don't know if you mentioned that. It is a Bionicle comic series, and that's why that's important.
It was.
It was a Bionicle comic series.
It attempted to be.
Alright, for those of you who listened to Creative Works, was it last week? Did we do Creative Works last week?
It was last week. Yes.
We touched upon how we met each other. All of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why everybody in this call is right in here now, and also the reason we know each other, is because of this thing called comic making. And we kind of went over that a little bit, but we should probably talk about that a little more. Because that's a huge part of how I know you, and how I know Eljay, and how I know Takuma, and our extended history as Bionicle fans before we became the Z-list celebrities that we are now.
Yeah,
all
so
in
in the
comic
time
making.
before time, when we all used to actually care about BZPower and go on it every single day, there was
Ouch.
a
still
there was
care.
a sub-forum
We still care.
specifically for comics, like fan comics to be created by, of course, fans. These would be based on Bionicle. Oh, big surprise. Bionicle comics on a Bionicle forum. Whoever heard of that? So, this was on BZPower for like the longest time. I think this sort of comic thing was going on since its very beginning. But
it wasn't
of course,
the beginning, but it was
Not
early.
always. Yeah.
it was, yeah, maybe not always, but it did come around. Anyway, most people in the beginning of its time just did like drawings, normal comics.
Normal comics.
But then came the rise of Sprite Comics, which, as the name suggests, were comics that were made on like MS Paint, and the comic authors would utilize sprites based on Bionicle characters like Matorn and stuff. And this became pretty popular because so many people were able to do it. Not everybody could draw, but it was a lot easier to like use the sprites. Someone comes up with a bunch of sprites and you just copy paste and blah blah blah. So that became a thing, and it was so popular. Like there's a lot of people that started getting in on this Sprite comic thing, and it eventually it got so big, like there were so many people contributing to it that BZPower actually did create a subform for comics. I just remember that wasn't always a thing.
Yeah, it ended up having its own subculture to boot.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, so
That I wrote a whole thing about that, but yeah, subculture.
with so many people making their own comics, a lot of them tended to kind of band together and work together. Come out with comics together, make sprites together, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, unions, which Kahi knows quite a bit about.
Well, okay, I want to preface this too. One of the unique things about if you've been on the internet, you know about Sprite Comics. They mostly form around video game communities. Like Sonic the Hedgehog probably has the most amount of like Sprite comics made of him, followed by like maybe Mega Man, and then some others. I feel like the most popular one is what 8-Bit Theater.
Never heard of it.
The one that with like that's but the one by
I know
the guy
the first
who made
one that was actually popularized was I believe it was neglected Mario characters.
Yeah, that's also another big one. Yeah, but the big deal is that they're all made out of game sprites. This is the interesting thing about BZPower and the Bionicle comic section, and what drew a lot of people to it, and why I think it became a subculture, is because we didn't necessarily had Sprite comics, we had these things called pixel art comics. The main difference is that Sprite comics are taken from a game, from this other thing that's produced to like make a game, and then used in a comic.
Pre-existing
pixel art
assets.
Comics, pre-existing assets basically. Pixel art comics are the author creates the sprites and then uses them. And the weird thing that happened with Bionicle comics is that most of them, pixel art comics became the norm. If you go to Sonic the Hedgehog, most of them are all ripped from Sonic games. But for Bionicle comics, authors would create their own thing called kits. These kits were like different collections of sprites, and they were all unique in different styles. Rage, RZMIK, is it Rage?
Yeah,
it's Rage.
Like a bunch of different
Shimaru,
different pixel artists on the forum would create these kits so that they could be used for various mediums, but mostly comics. Like comics was the big thing that everybody wanted to get into, and everyone wanted to use a particular sprite that fitted their style.
Right. And it's really weird because you don't really see communities that are based out of pixel art. Usually they all use games from, and Bionicle had sprites that were used in games and just nobody ever used them. For whatever reason, no one ever really used them. Outside of one, and that's where Takuma comes in.
Oh yeah, I guess that counts as a game.
Yeah,
I mean, to be fair,
technically it's a flash render.
Yeah,
a flash vector. It was turned into a pixel.
Maybe they're. I don't know if they technically count as sprites even, because long story short, I use the Monog style character creation kit. But the interesting thing is that, like Kahi mentions, it's the only kit, really notably, that has pre-existing assets in it. I'd argue that most of it wasn't. Like the foundation, the first few things that came with it were more or less copy pasted or ripped or whatever we call it from the game. Everything else was done mostly by hand, specifically by the person who started the kit, Matoran.
Yeah, I remember.
Right.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. Basically, he expanded it with not only content from the game, but his own custom work.
Yeah, he would go and draw the masks out and make them fit the style himself, because, these animations only played through, 2001 through, 2003? We didn't have Toamari masks or anything like that back then, but there was a few of those in the kit.
Right.
But it was very different from, the comics that everyone else was doing, because typically those images were, maybe up to 5, or, not 5, but 10, 20 pixels tall.
Tiny.
Whereas I was working things that were, up to, 100 pixels.
Right.
So very different visually.
So, the styles where it gets started. Van, you were there in 2003, right?
Yep.
Talk to us about, the early stages of that. How did you get your start of that?
Thinking about it now, I think this is probably the time where Sprite Comics really started to get big, because I remember back then I used to like searching around that forum and seeing all the older comics, and I couldn't go back that far in time.
Right.
And some of the oldest comics that I managed to find were mostly like hand drawn, and it was pretty crazy. So yeah, no, I got to see like a lot of comic series just kind of build up a whole bunch of attention from different BZPower members. I remember one in particular, Psycho Dogs and Carbonated Beverages, which was created by a user named The Editorialist. And what was cool about this was that he wasn't the only author contributing to this series. It was a collaboration between different authors as well, and they would all post their comics in one topic.
Kind of like how we do our YouTube channel, in a way.
Yeah, basically. So that was pretty cool, and I know Eljay and I used to talk about those comics for a good bit.
Yeah.
That comic series actually is what inspired me to start doing my own comics, because I freaking loved it.
It inspired a lot of people, like a lot of names
Yeah.
later. It's kind of weird though, because the Editorialist, he was around for like 6-7 years, then he dropped off the face of the planet. No one's ever seen him online since. However, the comics form, when I mentioned earlier that it kind of developed its own subculture, like a round brick of cheese, it really did, because there were these kind of generations. There were veteran comic makers, there were new comic makers, who everyone was ranked depending on how much activity their topic got. I was 14, by the way.
It was pretty
it's a
cool
huge
because
thing.
I was number 4.
Yeah.
I got it.
Well, you know what?
It's pretty cool.
I never heard
because,
about this.
The generations of comic makers, quote unquote, would show in their style. Like you'll see a
Right.
lot of the older ones, the ones that have been on the forum for a while. You'll see them using older kits.
And it's
Like
also
I
older
started out
programs.
using Reg, and I stuck with Reg for a while.
Yeah, for a while. Then you switched over to RZ, and that's what you mainstayed with.
Right.
I
And-
started
Oh
out
no,
with
no,
Reg.
should-
that
we
was.
should, like- we
I'm
should have-
talking
we should
about
switch
when
that.
I like first started making comics, like way back in 2003 with my old account.
Oh yeah, the dupe account no one knows about.
I feel like Messo's going to have a field day with having to find these kits again and like throwing them on screen so we can see the styles that we're talking about. We should like give
I
him
still have them.
No, you
I
don't
have
I still
them
have- I
somewhere.
still have-
He's
Oh
gonna
man,
sit there.
that'll be.
He's gonna sit there and go, hey guys, why don't you just give me some of your comics so I can show those on screen? And I'm gonna be like, no,
Oh,
not
no.
happening.
No,
Why
you should
not?
totally
You
do
don't-
it.
you
I'm
don't
going to
like
give him
them
some of my
anymore?
comics. You don't
Have you
like
reached
comics?
that point where you're like, oh no, these were terrible?
No. I'm perfectly fine with my comics. It's just my comics have a very particular stigma. I was probably out of the group here, the people on this podcast right now, this very moment, I was easily the most controversial comic maker. By
Sure.
far.
Well,
Yes.
I don't know.
I don't know. You and
Absolutely.
VTP, man. You
Like-
and VTP.
No, he's saying out of his group. But I gave some people
Oh,
a
out
run
of
for
this
their
group,
money.
yeah.
But not as much as you did at the
out
end.
of four of us.
At the
four
end,
of us right here.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. You had some interesting things at the end.
I had a
but I
lot
don't
of
think a lot of people that
contributions.
watch our videos would really get that stigma from just seeing a panel. I know it'd be kind of cool
Oh,
to see
yeah,
our art
no.
styles. You
Freaking
can
LJ
see.
used to get into arguments all the time on the comics.
Yeah, I would. It's not
No one
necessarily-
knew how to give. Go ahead.
I mean, it's not like I intended for that to happen. Circumstances created certain situations, and it just happened.
Yeah, no. Here's
I'm
the thing
shaking my
about the
head.
comics forum. So many people got on it that we got like a good variety of characters that tried to make comics. We got a bunch of people that had pretty big egos, or just like to kind of act like a jerk, kind of like a know-it-all, like attempt to give criticism, but it's not really criticism. It's more like you suck and you should do this because I think it's good, and I don't care what you think is good. That was a big problem that happened back then. A lot of people were just chastising each other instead of actually trying to help.
That
And
still happens
Competition.
now.
yeah, exactly. There was a lot more competition because of the growth of the comics form. A lot of people were trying to one up each other, and it was weird. It was so weird, especially considering the fact that when I really got into comics, I didn't really read much of the comics forum. I would
didn't
literally
either.
only hop on just to update my comics, and then that was it. You know, I didn't like going around all too much. I mean, I like to support some people every so often whenever I can, like check out a comic by Eljay or Kahi and be like, oh, that was a really good one. Here's a post.
Oh,
but I never really got into all the interactions like Eljay did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, posts were lifeblood in the comics form because BZPower, and they still have this thing. This is something BZPower has that we don't, and it's a time limit for post topics.
They don't do it anymore for comics.
They finally released it on comics.
Back then we had the shortest amount of time.
We had 20 days.
We had 20 days. In the entire forum, we had 20 days. It was funny too because completely off topic, you had 30 days until you had to. So that means if you did a Mario themed Sprite comic and completely off topic, you had 30 days to do it. But if you did a Bionicle one, you only had 20 days.
It's like, okay, I see how it is. I'm just gonna go over to somewhere else.
But it helped a lot. It did help a lot.
But yeah,
it definitely really gave some incentive to make more comics. I'll give it that.
On the other hand,
the unfortunate thing is, we couldn't double post in our own topics, even if we had an update during that time. So we had to hunt. No, we could not.
Yeah, we could.
No, we couldn't.
No, that was a later development, Kai.
Yeah, that was later on.
Oh, okay, all right. When I came,
we could not do that, so we had to look for people to post and be a buffer for us. And we're like,
please,
come on,
post.
keep my topic alive. I'm like, what?
It's kind of like how YouTube works now, where it's like, all right, I subscribe to your channel, now subscribe to mine.
Oh, right, yeah, you do the initial exchange.
We don't have that on our boards. It's completely, topics last forever. There's no such thing as necro posting.
I hate it when people bring that up, like, yo, you necro posted. What? When did we ever say that was a thing?
That really just anyway.
And we have a really great search feature.
Takuma, did you want to say something?
Okay.
I've forgotten what it was now.
Oh,
that's all right. So let's date ourselves. All right. Let's see. Takuma,
Eljay,
Eljay.
How you doing?
I think it goes Venom, Eljay, Takuma, and then me. Then you say, all right, 2003. Eljay, when did you join? When did you start making comics?
When I start making comics, 2007.
7. Takuma.
If I really wanted to, I could look it up. I'm gonna guess either late 07 or early 2008.
I'll do you a favor. I'll look it up for you.
Yeah.
I was a late bloomer. I was 2009. I came around like
dude. No one liked my comics when I first started in 03. I was horrible. Like, I was so young and naive. I didn't know what I was doing. Honestly, I don't think I came out with quality comics until after I made that new account under the Venom name that everybody knows me as now.
It's like
and then I made brand new comics. I changed up the style completely and got more attention.
RZ was a good look. I like that a lot.
RZ, it was that and the fact that I for some reason I decided to base my comics on the symbiote characters from like Marvel comics.
Right.
That's where Venom and Carnage and everything just started coming. Even some people would criticize me and be like, these are kind of cool, but these aren't really based on Bionicle. What are you doing?
I remember you had it was a weird thing because you had Eddie Brock in your comics. He was a character, and I was like, oh, okay. And then like Spider-Man also showed up too. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Spider-Man's here. I don't know why.
Yeah, but for some reason, I still got attention. Like even then, my comics weren't all the greatest. Like my, still being young and weird, having a weird sense of humor. But for some reason, they still picked up attention, and I don't know. I guess that was my little sense of motivation. Like, wow, people actually like the stuff I put out. I should do a little more of it. Kind of throw more of my ideas out there and see what kind of reception I get for that. And eventually, the comics evolved. I felt like changing up the style, and I matured, grew some sense, and I don't know what else to say in that regard.
Looked it up. I released my first comic on June 26th of 2007. So it wasn't as late as I thought.
All right. In that case, I got to now find out when I started mine. That determines our...
apparently someone even recorded the time as being 2:55 in the morning.
That's possibly you.
Central.
That's possibly you, man.
All right,
let's see. My comic series was started March 14th, 2007. So I beat you by like March... 1 month! 1 month. 1 month.
Thumbs up.
I was 1 month before you.
What happened to May?
March, May, 2 months. 2 months before. Okay. Let me tell you, when I was
no,
younger,
he was homeschooled.
I was younger, here are the months that I absolutely knew in order. It was June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Anything else was really difficult for me to recall.
So you forgot half the
in
year. You forgot half the year, basically.
Nothing ever happened in them. So it's like, there's no holidays, there are no birthdays that I know.
Nothing, including the start of your comics.
Well, okay, that eventually became a thing, but obviously, yeah. So,
yeah, I mean,
okay,
yeah.
I was 2 months before Takuma. That's
So,
not very
wow.
far.
When I came around, I remember, like, I think I came around where there was a big shift, and I was able to take advantage of that shift, and kind of like, I was one of the first initial people that really, like, popularized this change in tone, I guess, would be. Maybe not the same in tone, but in terms of graph, like, basically, the idea is that people had used MS Paint for a long time, like a really long time. When I came at the tail end. I started, like, checking out comics and posting, even when I joined BZPower, I started posting late. But I was checking out the comics forum for a while there. Dark 709 was still big. That's the era I came in. For people who don't know, Dark 709, he was the voice of Takuma in Biocraft. Fun fact.
He was going to be, and
he was going to
all
be.
of his lines. Let me tell you,
did a very good job.
Dark 709 is a fantastic person. What did you think of his comics?
He was so nice.
Whatever.
He's a really nice guy.
Dark 709 was a great down-to-earth guy. We did an interview with him that I believe is on YouTube.
I believe so.
We almost lost it because it almost got ransomed, but someone tried to ransom our interview. But yeah, he was great. But
he was a really nice guy. But
so nice.
His comics, okay, so Dark 709 suffered from, like, being the most popular comic topic on the forum. Like, number one, he was the most popular, like, comic maker, basically. And he did a thing by having, he had characters that had one defining trait about them. And he kind of like a slapstick SpongeBob-ish kind of humor. The approach, there's a lot of physical humor, there's a lot of...
I guess that's really the best way to put it, like old school SpongeBob
style. Yeah, like also like, kind of Tom and Jerry-esque with more words. He had a character, and he popularized a lot of the cliches that were used. So like,
you'd have the main character.
Right, the main character.
And represented by the author. So Dark 709 was the main character of his own comics.
Right.
Then you'll have like the idiot that likes to hang around him.
Right.
You'll have some other side characters like, I don't know, the girl, the
girl.
guy that's kind of cool. And then you'll have like the big bad villain that wants to like take over the world / take over your comic series or whatever. And that became like the standard, I guess, where everybody wanted to do that. Even I did that, to be honest.
And remember, we're overlooking the thing. We talked about all the good comics that we remember. There were also a flood of terrible comics. Like, a ton of people did horribly, like, just, they obviously copied off Dark 709. They were unreadable, they were not funny, they were just terrible. And that's a lot of the stigma from the comics forum came around that, because there were just a ton of
everybody just
stuff.
Everybody tried to meet this sort of standard, and they like pushed themselves. But really, they just did it for the popularity, because the comics forum was a really popular forum for a while.
Even for the people that were invested in it, yeah. It wasn't like popular
used to appear. Yeah, some comic topics used to appear on the Hot Topics list on the front page of BZPower. That's how big they were. And then for a while, for some reason, they just got rid of all comic topics from that list.
They did. I don't know why, they just totally did it.
Which is funny
probably because they wanted completely different topics on the forum to get more attention or something, maybe.
I mean, part of the reason we had that flood of bad comics was because sprite kits were so easy to use. And I feel that's one advantage.
That too.
Sorry, what?
No, I was agreeing with you.
That's one advantage I feel like I did have with the kit I was using, is because it was so cumbersome and not user-friendly. Nobody really tried it.
Right.
And unlike other ones where, you could step in and visually it would look pretty similar to good comics, you have to start reading and you realize, okay, yeah, this is actually kind of rubbish. When people tried to make the monologue-style comics and failed, they failed. Because there would be, like, big white blocks around the character. And they couldn't figure out transparency.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And they're all so big, so you'd have people with like massive images, or they like use paint to try and shrink it, so it would just get all kind of garbled. Paint back then was worse than it is now.
Oh, that's
so they were like beyond
really
recognition.
Important. Nobody really had a sense of style, I guess. I don't know how to word this, but basically the comics just visually would not look good. Like you'd see, like you guys were saying, there would be unreadable text. Sometimes there would be backgrounds that just looked so ugly.
It
made it really hard to look at.
The backgrounds were terrible. They would use primary colors as backgrounds, which is horrible. And they would people didn't know how colors work. People didn't know how design worked. People didn't know how to make text readable.
So many times you'd have how to tell a joke. Text would get in the way, would be like over the characters. You wouldn't be able to see them.
There were some people that tried to like give positive critique and try to help them, but I just remember for a good bit, a lot of people just chastised the bad comic makers, quote unquote. They never really helped them. They're just like, this is bad. Your backgrounds are bad. Your characters are bad.
There's a good amount of time.
To be fair, it's almost like a return on the fact that people who did the quote-unquote drawn comics would bash Sprite Maker comics, regardless of whether or not they were good. There was always like that civil war.
Yeah.
There was a lot of
that did come up.
That did come up like a bit, but it was just because eventually it came to the point where hand-drawn comics was so hard to do that they didn't last. Again, 20 days. You had 20 days to do a new comic, and sometimes it just wasn't feasible to do a hand-drawn thing in there. And that's why those ended up dying a lot sooner.
And they would get really mad.
Right. I mean, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, Eljay, go.
Yeah, no, you guys were talking about how like people would be chastised for bad comics. It's funny because I never really got that. My comics when I started out, white background, characters running across screen, doing what basically amounted to nothing. Everyone kept on just, giving suggestions, being very helpful, and eventually I got a lot better. I got a lot of help when I started.
Yeah, no, I got a good bit of help too, personally, but I did see it time to time, or hear of it at least, because like I said, I didn't really roam around that much, but I didn't get too much of the chastising until I really started to talk to people. What was it? There's this, like I mentioned earlier, some of the comic makers like to come together and kind of make these sort of unifications, make comics together. I did that.
Multi-author series are big.
Yeah. Or straight up co-authors where like I'll work on my own series with my own ideas, and then there's going to be this guy that wants to help add on to it, like help me dish out more comics to tell a story or something.
That was a big deal.
Backgrounds I actually had easy.
The first real one I had was by the name Jedi Bot.
Oh, that's another story for another day, Ben. Let's table that discussion. TTV talks about Jedi Bot
I'm not going to talk about the long history I had with that guy, but I am just going to say that he's one example of someone who I ended up getting on bad terms with. Like, our communication just did not turn out well. Like, the dude, he for a while we were friends. We were like, let's make comics here. That sounds cool, and we dish out the comics, share ideas, what have you. But he got a certain way in attitude, and I didn't really appreciate it. And so then there just sparked this sort of drama. And long story short, I ran into more people I had similar problems with, and those became the people that really attempted to chastise me on the forums. So moral of the story, don't make friends on the comics forum. Just don't.
No.
Don't worry,
like us.
Yeah, we won't.
Yeah, no, we're not friends, don't worry.
Yeah, Takuma.
I was just saying all I was going to say is backgrounds were one part that I had actually pretty easy. Because whereas everyone else using like the typical pixel art type Sprite comics, you had to make a background and make it look nice and set up everything, make it. I didn't have to worry about that. I just had to copy the entire. Words.
Oh.
I just boot up Monolog, or even I would go into the files and just pick like a specific scene, so I didn't have to worry about characters or other things getting in the way. Just boot it up, full screen, copy the entire screen, use that as my background.
Oh my god,
That was
goodness.
zero work. And actually, because the really interesting thing about the Monog style kit was that it was almost like a community project. Like it was started by Mator and Anknu,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
everyone
There were a lot
kind of
people
contributed their
contributing to
own
that.
individual bits to it. And for a while there, all I did was just give people backgrounds that they never really end up doing anything with.
Yeah, I used to contribute to some sprite kits too.
You
In
know,
fact,
right.
some of the sprites I used in my comics were.
I mean, yeah,
I
there would
made
be.
some of them.
Obviously, the Venom thing was made by you. There wasn't like who's it? What's his name? RZ. What's his name?
Rahizaku.
Rahizaku.
Rahizaku. Never. I don't think he actually like made Venom as a part of like his repertoire.
Oh yeah, no, that was the custom thing that I had to do myself. Even and when any kit I used, really, I had to customize it so I could actually make my characters look the way I want them to. Especially since a majority of them were not Bionicle characters. But
Right. Now, I feel like there are two big revolutions to creator-made kits. Because there usually would be one person who made the kit, and then there would be people that would add on to it. And there were two big, like, add-ons that were, like, you know, pretty big for improving that kit and making it a huge thing. The first one was RZMIK to the original RZ kit. RZMIK, like, there's originally this kit, and it had, like, black outlines and everything. And I think, was it MK and who else? There are two people who reworked that, and they added, like, a tri-shade to it, and they basically, and they added, like,
there was a bunch of
360s.
people that, like, redid that kit. It wasn't
Right.
even just that kit, too. Like, this used to happen with a bunch of other...
Well, I mean,
Sprite
like,
kits,
that
like
was the big
Chimaru.
deal. Yeah, I was gonna say Chimaru later, but that was the big deal with RZMIK, which I believe completely replaced RZ. In the sense that nobody really used RZ past that point once that kit came out.
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
became
I
the
know
I
what
mean,
de
you're
facto,
talking about.
RZ was arguably harder to use because it was in more pieces.
Right, exactly. Reg had poses already made. RZ had to piece it together. And then the other thing
And
would
then
be
there's the
Six
fact
Shade.
that, like, the mini kit had its own, you know, kind of chibi style that
Right.
looked a lot more pleasing to make comics with.
Trimoru was the other one. There was this thing called Six Shade Trimoru Omega.
So
that was
Oh
made by
my
Gorilla
gosh.
Key.
Six
And that-
shaded was
It
stupid.
was great. It was not stupid.
People
it was
on
not
BZP
stupid.
people
Waste
on
of
BZP
time.
would try to do anything to one up another person.
Listen, no,
Like,
listen.
hey,
you want to
even
go?
if it
This
means-
go. This
Hey,
is
Even if it means
shades.
adding more shades,
the
of,
shades
like, brightness.
improved the original Trimoru Omega.
They really
Absolutely
didn't,
not.
though.
3 shaded,
They really
maybe. 6 shades.
Six Shades
Six
If
Shades.
you
Adds a
try
bit of
and
depth.
enlarge that, it looks like a bunch. It's a monochrome picture at that rate. That's it.
Yeah, it just looks like a big gradient, and it just doesn't look good.
I
it would
did
probably
go
look
back.
better if
The Monog kit
if,
had 9 shades.
It'd probably look better if majority of those shades were not tertiary colors.
Yeah, not to mention,
Fair enough.
Takuma, in
Okay,
regards
yeah.
to the Monog kit, it was huge. So you like
was
all those
huge.
colors,
You
they'd be
just on
splayed
one
out.
sprite.
Yeah, a
There
single
was- there
Majoran
was
was
Six
like
Shade a lot of
300 by
things.
300.
Like
pixels.
say you got a Lewa sprite, and then there would be like, you know, the normal shade of green,
Right.
and then there's going to be a bright shade of green and a dark shade of green to, you know, kind of show that there's a light source hitting it. But then the 6th shade was like, oh, here's a lighter shade of green, here's a lighter shade of green, here's a darker shade of green to go under the dark shade. Oh my goodness, you
It
people,
worked,
you're just
but
too
I
much. It did
agree
not
that
work.
like I went back like when I did a new comic series, like I went back to 3 Shades. I think 3 Shades is the best thing for that size. But
That's why I
think,
used Rage.
But all right, you used the worst
always
version
use
of
Rage.
I
you
used a
you used
fantastic
2.
version of
you
Rage.
used 2 instead of 2.5. 2.5 was one of those things that having 4 shades really helped.
2.5
the-
was great, absolutely.
2.5
However,
was pretty
2.0 had a much cartoonier style, and it was much more in line with my comedy.
Yeah, no, I mean like
Yeah.
that's
It
where
worked
that
better
happened.
for my purposes. Nothing against 2.5. 2.5
RZ
is great.
RZ had the thing. There's different styles went along different types of comics. RZ had more dramatic approach to it. Trimoru had a more cartoonish thing. All the people that I knew that used Trimoru, when
Sure.
6 Shade came out, the big thing about 6 Shade. All right, listen, you can take it and stop it. You want? We can talk about Mr.
all I can say is
Merkenis
like
here.
6 Shade Jimoru came up around that time that everyone thought using GIMP and Photoshop was the way to do comics.
It was the way to do comics.
Okay,
That was
here's the
such a
thing.
weird
There was
transition
one
where-
guy There's one
Listen.
guy in the comics form toward the end of my duration on BZPower
Right.
who's saying no one should ever use paint. Like, even if they're starting out, they should never, ever, ever, ever use paint for anything.
man.
I
They
disagree
should
with that.
Who
immediately
here
start
didn't
out-
start out with paint?
Exactly.
I didn't start out with paint. Immediately started with Photoshop.
I
Yeah,
started with
but-
paint.
And look
I was
what
using
kind
something
of
more
crappy comics
complicated.
you made with that. No, just kidding.
Number 4.
Anyway,
Okay, well,
we're getting
we're getting into our age-old
Well,
debates
to,
about
yeah.
But
we
okay,
got to
basically,
a lot of
and we're running out of time. So
There
what's-
is-
any
no,
any
come on, we just got started in this.
concluding
You've been
thoughts
talking
about
this whole time, man.
Hey man,
Yeah,
you
gave-
started a
you gave
whole
your
new story.
Holden
I just
thing.
wanted to reminisce a little bit.
you
Now
wanted
you want to
your
bring
whole
up some
thing.
old
I like
crap.
comics. I thought my comics were good.
Comics were cool, yeah.
There
man. They
is
were so
one
cool.
kind
The
of
community
comic
wasn't
that we
that
haven't
cool.
mentioned yet. Again, it wasn't a very popular medium, but
Photo.
it did exist. Photo
Photo
comics.
I
That
mean,
is true.
Yeah.
They existed. I didn't really find a lot of them. Like a lot of them weren't just there. You know.
I appreciated the fact that they were around. Basically, you know,
The only-
people taking pictures, like physical pictures of their sets or whatever, and using those
And
pictures
mocks.
as the comic panels. I think that was kind of a cool idea.
The only one I really followed was That's Messed Up by Gerlicke.
Yeah, that one was that was probably
Gerlicke
the
was
most
pretty
popular
cool.
one.
Yeah, I don't know.
He did a lot of stuff.
He still does ones with Paraka.
Paraka Attack. Yeah, he still
Yeah.
does it on the
He
forum once.
still
in a while.
does them every once in a great while.
He is one of those people that uses MS Paint, and he's used it from the beginning, and he's very good at it. And I feel like MS Paint is one of those things that you need to do. You need to have minimalism, like ingrained into you. One of my
MS Paint
favorite
is
people.
it was a good stepping stone because you got to basically get a grasp of how to put a comic together in the first place, and then Photoshop or GIMP really, because GIMP was free and a lot more accessible.
Right, most people use
would
GIMP.
kind of be taking you to the next step where you can make your comics visually look better.
Some
but a
special
lot of
things.
Word
people
bubbles
got
were the big
this-
thing. It was harder to do word bubbles in Paint, and it was
I
easier
tried
Yeah,
to
a
do
lot
them.
of
do
people
word bubbles.
for some, but some people
gave up.
just got this weird idea that it was necessary to just jump into GIMP and Photoshop and do all these weird effects for your comics to be good. No, man, quality always came first.
No, I mean, I think quality was all right. Here's the thing: whenever somebody started, it was easier for them to learn how to do GIMP and Photoshop because then they could actually do. Most of the people that did MS Paint didn't do it well.
Man, Takuma, remember when we wanted to talk about the comics form and not method?
This is we're talking about comics. This is part of the thing. This is our we have these debates all the time about.
This
Like,
is
this is part of
TTV
the thing.
Talks about comics. This
Yeah,
is relevant. Come
This
on,
is relevant.
man.
I feel like there is a point in time where to this date, my favorite series, my favorite like mini saga that's taken place in any comic was Lavaside Rahi, who did The End. He ended his comics. He's one of the few comic makers that actually ended his comics. He did a 13-part miniseries in MS Paint, and it was great. It was phenomenal. I should probably upload. It got taken down because Brickshelf is down or something.
Modshelf is down,
Modshelf
not
is down.
Brickshelf.
Yeah, Brickshelf's the
But
worst.
I'll put it like on Imgur or something so people can read it. But it was really good. And
Yeah, my comics got taken down too, and I made like a lot of comics, over 200. I'm not putting them back up.
I put them all back up.
I lost interest doing my comics after like the popularity died down on BZP in general, and you know the downtime.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
downtime.
downtime,
A downtime was a big deal.
did a number, but the reason I'm not doing
I was
comics
not
anymore,
motivated at
like,
all.
We have an audience now. We have an audience again.
Right.
On
Yeah.
BZPower, it was kind of interesting because we all had our own individual audiences in that subform. You were popular in the subform, didn't mean you were popular in the rest of the
Right.
the form, but you were popular in the comics form, so people knew your name, they contacted you about things, so on and so forth. We all had some sort of an audience, so coming to TTV, it's like, we already know how to handle with this. Kahi, you had yours, Ven, you had yours, Takuma, you had yours, I had mine. And so we have that kind of again, but I'm gonna be frank, when I left BZPower, I didn't exactly leave on good terms, and the reason I didn't do that was because of comics. So a lot of that stigma has kind of stuck with me, and it really killed my interest in doing any sort of pixel comic of any kind.
And also,
So,
let's be fair. Like, comics are always a way to hone our skills and to tell like stories and do things creatively for us. I feel like that was a big draw for everybody, was that you were able to do stuff creatively and you had an audience.
Yeah, that was the
for it.
big deal about it.
And like right now, we have that for our
people
YouTube channel.
ended up getting in over their heads.
Right.
Yeah.
There was not a lot, but there was a little bit of crossover between the comics subforum and the comedy subforum.
I
man.
want to exactly say.
Crossover.
This is going to be a long discussion. Look,
I was
we're
just
running
going
out
to
of
say
time
that
here.
there were people
Man,
who
we should
would
do
be in
another.
both.
We need to do
and
another one, man. We didn't even talk about continuities.
You're interrupting!
We basically didn't. Okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I wonder why we didn't get to that stuff, Kahi.
Why are you yelling at me?
Okay,
Are we
Takuma,
having
just
like a-
let's wrap this up. Just give your final thoughts. Continue.
I don't remember what I was
what
going
you
to
were
say
saying.
anymore.
Okay,
Although-
on that note,
wait.
let's end this.
Okay.
No, wait,
Okay,
go
good.
ahead.
No.
I want you
Thanks
to talk.
everybody. This has been great.
Oh my god. All right, fine. Well, this has been TTV Talks.
We'll do
Be
talk
sure to
about
check us out
comedy
on
sometime.
Vessel. What's the link for Vessel again? I always forget.
Vessel.com
It's,
/ the TTV channel.
Nope, actually, that's
And
wrong.
be sure. Oh,
Vessel.com / channels / the TTV channel.
No,
It
no.
works,
there you
it
have
works
it.
either way.
You
Yeah,
can
it
just do
is.
no. You just do / the TTV channel, and it'll take you there.
Yeah, that works just as
Okay,
well.
I mean-
You don't
Okay.
you don't have to add in the channel.
try either one of those.
I literally just tried it. It
So-
works.
So bootleg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So, check out the message boards at board.ttvpodcast.com / nothing. And don't actually put the nothing
nothing.
part.
try
And
this.
is there anything else I need to plug in, or can we go ahead and
Audible
wrap this up?
shirts. Yeah, but that's basically it. I want to talk about this again, man. We scratched the surface.
Oh yeah, check out Audible, audibletrial.com / TTV, and check out our shirts. We have them on sale on ttvpodcast.com. That's about it. So, I'm Venom,
I'm Eljay.
I'm Kahi.
I'm Takuma Nuva.
and this has been TTV Talks. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
I hope
Bye.
it's better next time.
I hope
Cheese,
so too.
Bye.
pie,
Bye.
all those
Goodbye.
other stupid cliches.